Welcome back, guys. Next couple of videos I want to do, and we're going to do this in two parts. So this is part one of basically first impressions of this new truck. I've had this for just over a week now, and I wanted to kind of split it up into two main components, and so that's why there's two parts on this. The first is going to be all about automated manual transmission. What are my thoughts on it? Why is it so different? Got somebody who made a comment. Prime gives you a class about how to drive an automatic truck, and so I wanted to address that, why they give you a class, what's so different about an automated manual versus an automatic, and that's an important distinction to make. And then my thoughts. This was probably the biggest stressor from me switching trucks. And then the second part, the part two video, is going to be my thoughts, more generic, Freightliner versus the International, which I've had for the last 4 years. Remember, I did previously have a Freightliner. I only had it for 3 months, lightweight Freightliner for 3 months. Before that, I actually was in a full-size, a condo Freightliner for about 5 months during training. Actually, yeah, about 5 months, a little less than 5 months during training. So I do have Freightliner experience. I do have lightweight Freightliner experience, but we're going to do a whole separate video on my thoughts on the Freightliner compared to the International. What I like about the Freightliner, what I don't like about the Freightliner. What I liked about the International that this truck doesn't have, and we'll get into all that. But let's get to part one, the automated manual transmission. And I want to clarify, I know I misspoke in the truck tour video. That's my apology. Detroit Diesel makes both the engine and the transmission. If you're not real technical or familiar, Detroit Diesel is the Daimler subsidiary. Daimler owns, obviously Mercedes-Benz. They own Chrysler products. On the heavy truck market, they own Freightliner and Western Star. And then Detroit Diesel, or that is their engine and transmission and other heavy truck parts manufacturer. So Detroit Diesel makes the engine and the transmission. And I know I misspoke, and it's partly because the nomenclature for the engine and the transmission is very similar, and they're one number off. So I know I misspoke on the transmission number. So I apologize for that. To clarify, to be 100% correct, this is a DD13 engine, which is a 13-liter engine. The larger trucks, the condos for Freightliner, have DD15 engines, so it's a slightly smaller engine. If you read their literature, the DD13 is designed more for what I do. It's designed for LTL, less than truckload freight. It's also designed for regional, and it's designed for something like what I do, which is a regional on flat ground. It's not designed necessarily for pulling hills, and I don't drive a lot of mountains, really. I don't drive a lot of mountains. There's certainly hills, and it's designed for fuel efficiency. And so I got that nomenclature with the transmission. So it's a DD13 engine paired to a DT, Detroit Transmission 12 transmission. DD13 engine, DT12 transmission, which is an automated manual transmission. It's an important distinction between an automatic and an automated manual transmission, and it's why Prime makes you take an entire class on an automated manual transmission. And you'll note the handout that they give you says automated transmissions. It doesn't say automatic transmissions as you go through that class through Prime. An automatic transmission is what you have in your standard passenger car, your standard pickup truck. It has a park gear. So you go to park, it automatically applies the parking brake. It automatically, you don't move if you hit the gas. It's a park setting. Some vehicles now do have adaptive cruise control, that is a large part, and it's integrated into automated manual transmissions. So there's a big difference where you may have adaptive cruise control in an automatic transmission. You don't necessarily have to have it in an automatic transmission. The other thing, and probably the biggest difference, is hills, mountains, and the engine brake. Probably the biggest difference in how you drive this vehicle versus your standard car with an automated manual transmission has to do with mountains. Going up mountains, pulling up mountains, and descent. And that's a large part of what they talk about. And so I wanted to first of all flip to things they talk about in that class. You'll see descent control. Figuring out how to go down a mountain. And I'm not talking about the little roller coaster hills that you see on almost every road in not flatland type country. I'm talking about Donner Pass. I'm talking about going up 6-7% grades, going down 6 and 7% grades that last miles, roads that have escape routes, truck runoff escape paths. That's what descent control is, and that's where you need to learn how to drive an automated manual transmission, as opposed to let's just leave it set at 65 and it's going to do its thing. You're not going to want to go down that mountain at 65 miles an hour. And that stands true whether you're driving a manual truck or an automated manual truck. So descent control, pulling up mountains. Pulling up mountains is a little bit easier, where you can just leave it in cruise control. And that's probably the biggest thing, is the adaptive cruise control is so much more involved in driving this vehicle. It automatically will turn on your engine brake. It'll automatically turn off your engine brake. There's something, and it's very interesting the first time it happens, as I flip to E-coast or neutral coast. If you're going down a mountain, or not a mountain, but going down a hill, transmission will automatically, as a fuel-saving feature, shift into neutral. And your RPMs drop all the way down to around 500, and you coast until you pick up too much speed and the transmission kicks back in. It's a very interesting sensation. It's very different from anything I've ever driven before. Also, I have always shifted this truck at around 1200 RPMs. This automated manual transmission will regularly be 1500 and above on RPMs, on shifting, on downshifting. It's a very, very different experience from anything I've ever driven. So after going over what's different about it compared to what I have driven before, what are my thoughts? I was warned about backing with this truck. You're not going to have control. That's probably one of the biggest fears that I have always heard, is backing up one of these trucks. You have no control. You can't slow down. You can't feather the clutch like you do when you're backing up. And I will say thus far, that has been a complete fallacy. I've had no problems whatsoever backing this truck. Driving has taken some getting used to. When you first start an automatic vehicle, when you shift into drive, and this shifts into drive as opposed to shifting into first, second, third, whatever gear you want to start off in, it's not going to do anything when you take your foot off the brake. It doesn't want to move. It just assumes you're still in neutral and you're not ready to go until you physically touch the accelerator. So that has taken some getting used to. And then you think, well, what happens if you do that and you're on a bit of a hill and there's a car behind you and you're going to roll backwards? Well, there's a solution for that. If you press down on the brake hard for 3 seconds, it will hold you for the time to move from the brake over to the accelerator. So there's definitely a learning curve. There's things that take getting used to on this truck, but backing has not been an issue. Driving has not been an issue. I have driven in Chicago traffic, I've driven in construction traffic, and I will say I do not miss shifting gears when there's construction. When I come up to a town that you have to slow down to 35 miles an hour on a state highway, as an example, and you're going 55 and then you have to slow down to 35. Bottom line, I like it. I was apprehensive. I don't want to say I was worried that I was not going to like it. I was just apprehensive. I was looking forward to the not having to worry about traffic. It was probably my biggest hope that this would work well when there's traffic. But I was a little bit concerned, at least, with the backing up. That was probably the number one. What's going to happen when I back up? Is it going to just rocket backwards and I'm not going to have control? I'm not going to be able to slowly back up at a couple of miles an hour. And thus far, that has not been an issue. You can control backing with the brake, similar to how you back with the clutch. So my initial review after, and again, I've just had this for a week, but I've gone to a lot of the places that I'm familiar with. I've done backing, I've driven in traffic, and thus far I'm enjoying the DT12 automated manual transmission on this truck. We'll have to do another review in a month or so, or 2 months, and we'll keep you up on my thoughts as I continue to drive this truck and my continued thoughts on the automated manual. That's part one of this video. Again, I want to touch on the differences between this truck and the International that I had for the last 4 years. So that'll be part two of my video. Thanks so much for watching. If you do want to come to Prime, of course, link in the description takes you right to the application, so you don't have to go search for it. And as well, if you do have questions, drop them right down in the comment section, or you can fire off an email. I've got that email linked in the description as well. You can send them directly to me if you don't want to ask them in public. Thanks so much for watching. Part two still to come. My thoughts, Freightliner versus International. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.